What secrets lie buried in the dust of history, hidden behind the quiet walls of ancient cloisters? What incredible skills did medieval nuns possess that would astonish you today? Did these women, often seen as simply pious and reclusive, really hold talents that shaped their world in astonishing ways during the medieval period? Prepare to uncover truths about these remarkable figures. Number 5. Master architects and engineers. In the vast sweep of the medieval era, from the waning days of the Roman Empire into the dawn of the Renaissance, convents and abbeys were not merely places of spiritual devotion. They were often formidable economic and intellectual powerhouses. Within their sturdy stone walls, women were not confined to simple prayer and needlework, as some might assume. Instead, many nuns, particularly abbesses, displayed an extraordinary aptitude for large-scale planning, construction, and resource management, rivaling their male counterparts in the realm of architecture and engineering. They designed their own spaces, oversaw complex building projects, and ensured the functional survival of their entire monastic communities. Consider the immense task of building a medieval complex. It required not just faith, but also a deep practical understanding of materials, labor, and logistics. An abbess, as the head of her community, was often the ultimate decision-maker for such endeavors. She would consult with master masons and carpenters, review plans, and allocate substantial financial resources. A responsibility for ensuring the structural integrity of a new chapel, the efficient flow of water to the convent's kitchens and infirmary, or the secure storage of valuable manuscripts in the scriptorium often fell directly under her purview. These were not minor undertakings. They involved decades of work, hundreds of laborers, and immense sums of money. One notable example is the extensive construction work at Quedlinburg Abbey, a powerful imperial convent in what is now Germany. Under the leadership of its abbesses, like Mathilda and Adelaide Ide, during the 10th and 11th centuries, the abbey expanded significantly. These abbesses were not just patrons. They directed the vision for the complex, which included a grand collegiate church, residential buildings, and fortifications. The sheer scale of their construction projects speaks volumes about their organizational skills and their understanding of architectural principles. The surviving Romanesque architecture at Quedlinburg stands as a testament to their ambition and capability, featuring robust stone masonry, impressive arches, and well-planned layouts. Further south, in the 11th century, the Benedictine nuns of Fontevraud Abbey in France embarked on a massive rebuilding project. Founded by Robert of Abbesses, this double monastery housed both monks and nuns, but was famously ruled by an abbess. The successive abbesses, beginning with Petronille de Chamille, oversaw the construction of a large abbey church, cloisters, and various residential buildings. The church itself, consecrated in 1119, is a remarkable example of Romanesque architecture, known for its domed ceilings, a feature that required considerable engineering prowess to execute successfully with the materials and knowledge. The abbesses would have been intimately involved in approving these ambitious designs, understanding the stresses and supports required for such vaulted structures. Their decisions directly influenced the aesthetic and functional aspects of these enduring edifices. The management of water was another critical aspect of medieval monastic life, and nuns were often at the forefront of designing and maintaining sophisticated water systems. Fresh, clean water was essential for hygiene, cooking, brewing, and for operating mills. Convents often constructed elaborate aqueducts, cisterns, and drainage systems. The nuns themselves, or certainly their abbesses, would have needed to understand the principles of gravity, water pressure, and sanitation. Practical application of such knowledge ensured the health and well-being of the entire community, preventing disease and supporting daily operations. The design of these systems, often incorporating lead pipes or carefully channeled stone conduits, demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of hydraulics. Even smaller convents engaged in significant building projects, from constructing new wings to repairing existing structures after fires or natural disasters. The nuns would be involved in selecting building sites, considering factors like access to resources, defensibility, and proximity to water. They would also manage the supply chains, for materials coordinating the delivery of quarried stone, cut timber, lime for mortar, and even specialized craftsmen. This level of management demanded a deep, practical knowledge of construction processes and a formidable ability to organize and direct labor. The role of an abbess as a master builder was not confined to grand, monumental projects. They also oversaw the design and functionality of interior spaces. For instance, the layout of a scriptorium needed to provide ample, natural light for reading and writing, while an infirmary required good ventilation and efficient spaces for patient care. The refectory needed to accommodate the entire community, and the dormitories required considerations for privacy and comfort. These practical considerations, often overlooked in the grand narratives of medieval architecture, highlight the hands-on involvement and practical ingenuity of the nuns. They were not merely living within these structures, they were actively shaping them. Historical records, such as building contracts and financial accounts from various convents, reveal the direct involvement of abbesses in planning and financing these projects. They negotiated terms with masons and carpenters, purchased vast quantities of materials, and paid wages. Their oversight extended to ensuring the quality of the workmanship and the adherence to the architectural vision. The surviving structures themselves, like the powerful walls of Saint-Odile Abbey in Alsace or the intricate cloister designs at various Cistercian nunneries, stand as silent witnesses to their technical prowess. These buildings were not just acts of piety. They were significant feats of engineering and architectural planning, brought to fruition under the direction of medieval nuns. Their enduring presence offers a glimpse into a world where women held substantial practical authority and exercised impressive skills in shaping the built environment around them. Number 4. Diplomats and estate managers. Beyond the quiet contemplation of monastic life, many medieval nuns, particularly abbesses, were powerful figures in the political and economic landscape of their time. They managed vast estates, negotiated with kings and emperors, and engaged in complex legal battles, acting as shrewd diplomats and formidable estate managers. The stereotype of the cloistered nun often obscures the reality of their significant temporal power and influence. Many convents, especially the older and more prestigious ones, held extensive landholdings. These lands were often acquired through royal charters, noble donations, or shrewd purchases over centuries. An abbess, as the head of such an institution, was effectively a feudal lord, overseeing hundreds or even thousands of serfs and tenants, managing agricultural production, collecting rents, and administering justice within her domain. This role demanded a sophisticated understanding of law, economics, and human relations. She was responsible for the economic welfare of her entire community and all the people living on convent lands. Take, for example, the Imperial Abbey of Gandersheim in Saxony, a powerful institution whose abbesses held princely status. They were directly subject only to the Holy Roman Emperor, granting them immense independence and authority. From the 9th century onwards, the abbesses of Gandersheim acted as regents for their territories, levied taxes, raised troops, and even minted their own coins. They participated in imperial diets, the assemblies of the Holy Roman Empire, alongside dukes and bishops. Mathilde, abbess of Gandersheim in the 10th century, was a granddaughter of Emperor Otto I and played a significant role in imperial politics. She not only managed her vast estates, but also intervened in disputes between secular rulers, demonstrating a keen diplomatic sense. Her involvement in the Gandersheim dispute with the Bishop of Hildesheim which lasted for decades, shows her tenacity and legal acumen in defending the abbey's rights and possessions against powerful claimants. The economic administration of a large abbey was a complex undertaking. Abbesses had to manage budgets, ensure adequate food supplies, oversee trade, and invest resources wisely. They directed the production of grain, wine, wool, and other goods on their lands. They employed stewards, bailiffs, and other administrators, but the ultimate responsibility for the convent's financial health rested with the abbess. She reviewed accounts, made decisions about investments, and negotiated contracts with merchants and suppliers. This required a level of financial literacy and strategic thinking that many modern corporate executives would recognize. Legal battles were a frequent reality for medieval convents. Property disputes, inheritance claims, and conflicts over feudal rights were common. Abbesses often represented their convents in secular and ecclesiastical courts, arguing their cases or commissioning legal experts. Their understanding of customary law, canon law, and civil law was often profound. They possessed a remarkable ability to navigate the intricate legal systems of the medieval world, protecting their convent's interests with tenacity. The surviving legal documents, charters, and court records from numerous convents reveal abbesses actively participating in these processes, sometimes even traveling long distances to defend their claims before kings or popes. Abbesses of Barking Abbey in England provide another compelling example. As one of the wealthiest and most influential nunneries in England, Barking's abbesses held extensive lands and rights. They were often women from powerful noble families, bringing with them connections and political savvy. Matilda de Bolebec, abbess of Barking in the 13th century, was deeply involved in land management and legal affairs. She initiated and oversaw various legal proceedings to protect the abbey's property and privileges. Her administrative prowess ensured the continued prosperity and independence of Barking Abbey, which was a vital center of learning and influence in medieval England. Beyond managing internal affairs and legal disputes, some abbesses engaged in high-level diplomacy. They acted as intermediaries between warring nobles, petitioned kings for favors, or even advised monarchs on matters of state. Their spiritual authority often lent weight to their political pronouncements, making them respected voices in a tumultuous world. The abbesses of some convents, like the Benedictine Abbey of Argenteuil in France, held such significant feudal rights that they were consulted on regional governance. The relationship between convents and secular rulers was often one of mutual benefit, but also potential tension. Abbesses had to skillfully balance the need for royal protection with the desire to maintain their independence. This required diplomatic finesse, knowing when to assert rights and when to seek compromise. They would write letters to kings, appeal to popes, and engage in direct negotiations with powerful lords. These interactions demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of power dynamics and a remarkable ability to articulate their convent's interests. The archives of many medieval convents are filled with charters, letters, and administrative records that document the extensive involvement of abbesses in the political and economic life of their regions. These documents reveal women who were not cloistered from the world but deeply embedded within its complex web of power, property, and negotiation. They were shrewd negotiators, diligent administrators, and astute legal minds, playing a far more active role in shaping medieval society than many might imagine. Their enduring legacy includes not only spiritual devotion, but also significant contributions to the political and economic stability of their time. Number 3. Scribes, illuminators, and librarians. In an era where literacy was often limited to a select few, and books were precious, hand-copied treasures, medieval convents stood as vital bastions of learning and knowledge preservation. Within their scriptoria, nuns dedicated countless hours to the meticulous art of copying manuscripts, transforming plain text into breathtaking, illuminated works, and carefully curating extensive libraries. These women were not just passive readers. They were active producers and preservers of knowledge, contributing immeasurably to the intellectual heritage of the medieval world. The scriptorium, the dedicated writing room within a convent, was a place of quiet industry. Here, nuns worked with an astonishing level of patience and skill. They prepared parchment from animal skins, a laborious process that required cleaning, stretching, and smoothing the material to create a perfect surface for writing. They sharpened quills from goose or swan feathers to a precise point, capable of forming elegant scripts. They mixed their own inks from gallnuts, lamp black, and various minerals to create rich, long-lasting colors. The work was demanding, often requiring long hours in dim light with painstaking attention to detail to avoid errors. Primary task was copying texts, which included religious works like the Bible, liturgical books, and commentaries, but also classical literature, scientific treatises, medical texts, and philosophical works. Nuns were responsible for transmitting knowledge from one generation to the next, often working from older, fragile manuscripts. The accuracy of their copies was paramount, as a single error could propagate through subsequent generations of texts. This required not only linguistic proficiency in Latin, the universal language of medieval scholarship, but also extreme concentration and a deep understanding of the subject matter. Beyond simply copying words, many nuns were master illuminators, transforming manuscripts into works of art. Illumination involved decorating the pages with intricate designs, vibrant colors, and often gold and silver leaf. These decorations included elaborate initial letters, border designs, and miniature scenes or portraits. The process was highly skilled, requiring artistic talent, a steady hand, and a profound knowledge of pigments and their properties. Nuns ground natural pigments from plants and minerals, sometimes even utilizing precious stones like lapis lazuli for blue. The application of gold leaf, a delicate and precise technique, added a shimmering quality that captured and reflected light. One of the most famous examples of nun-produced illumination comes from Herod of Landsberg, Abbess of Hohenberg in Alsace during the 12th century. She is renowned for creating the Hortus Deliciarum, or Garden of Delights, an encyclopedic manuscript intended to instruct the nuns of her community. This colossal work, comprising over 600 pages and nearly 1,200 illustrations, was an educational tool containing theological, historical, and scientific knowledge. The illustrations, which likely involved Herod herself and other nuns in the scriptorium, are remarkably vivid and detailed, reflecting the intellectual curiosity and artistic skill within her convent. Though much of the original was destroyed in a fire, surviving copies and fragments testify to its extraordinary quality. Hildegard of Bingen, another prominent 12th century figure, also had her visions and writings meticulously copied and illuminated by the nuns under her direction. Her grand theological work, Civius, features striking illustrations that depict her complex visionary experiences. These images were not merely decorative, they were integral to conveying her profound spiritual insights. The quality of these illuminations, with their distinctive style and rich symbolism, highlights the artistic capabilities within her convents at Rupertsberg and Evingen. Nuns also played a crucial role as librarians. They were responsible for organizing, cataloging, and preserving the convent's collection of books, which could number in the hundreds, making them significant repositories of knowledge. They developed systems for storing books, often in chests or on shelves, and maintained inventories. They also sometimes facilitated the lending of books to other monastic communities or to secular scholars, thus participating in a wider network of intellectual exchange. The care and preservation of these precious volumes, susceptible to decay and damage, was a continuous and vital task. Creation of these manuscripts was not just a technical skill, it was an intellectual pursuit. The nuns were often translators, editors, and even authors themselves. They compiled chronicles, wrote poetry, composed hymns, and produced scholarly commentaries. Roswitha of Gandersheim, a 10th century canoness, stands out as one of the earliest known female playwrights in the Latin West. Her plays, inspired by Roman comedies but with Christian themes, were copied and preserved within her convent scriptorium, touting the literary prowess of medieval nuns. The detailed, time-consuming nature of manuscript production meant that only institutions with stable resources and a commitment to learning could undertake such work. Convents, with their communal life and emphasis on education, were ideally suited for this. The surviving manuscripts from medieval nunneries scattered in libraries across Europe are not just historical artifacts. They are direct evidence of the extraordinary intellectual and artistic contributions of these women. They illustrate how nuns served as crucial guardians and disseminators of knowledge, ensuring that the wisdom and creativity of the past survived into the future. Their hands preserved the words. Their brushes illuminated the ideas, leaving a colorful legacy of intellectual and artistic achievement that truly shaped medieval society. Number 2. Brewing and Vinting Masters. For many medieval monastic communities, self-sufficiency was not merely a desirable goal, but an absolute necessity. Far from being purely spiritual centers, convents often functioned as bustling economic hubs, producing much of what they needed for their daily lives. Among their most important and widespread crafts was the large-scale production of beverages, making nuns proficient brewers of beer and masterful vintners of wine. This expertise was not just for internal consumption. The quality and quantity of their products often made them significant economic players in their regions, selling their surplus to the wider community. Beer was a staple drink in medieval Europe, consumed by almost everyone, including children, due to concerns about water quality. Nuns brewed various types of beer, from nourishing porters and ales for daily sustenance to stronger, more festive brews for special occasions. The process was labor-intensive but highly skilled. It involved sourcing large quantities of grain, barley, oats, or wheat, and malted it, a process that required careful control of temperature and moisture to sprout the grains and develop their sugars. The malt was then crushed, steeped in hot water, and the resulting sugary liquid, called wort, was boiled with hops for flavor and preservation. Finally, yeast was added for fermentation. Convents often had dedicated brew houses with large copper kettles, wooden fermentation vats, and extensive storage cellars. The nuns, or their lay sisters and servants under their direct supervision, managed every step of this complex process. They understood the nuances of temperature control, the precise timing of adding hops, and the critical role of sanitation to prevent spoilage. Quality of their beer was often renowned, with some convent brews commanding higher prices than secular alternatives. This reputation was built on consistent quality, which itself depended on the nuns' meticulous attention to detail and their acquired brewing expertise. The Benedictine nuns of St. Hildegard Abbey near Rudisheim in Germany are a modern example of a tradition that extends back centuries. While the current abbey was founded in the early 20th century, it continues a monastic brewing and vinting tradition that was common in medieval times. Many medieval convents, particularly in regions where grapes grew, well-cultivated vineyards and produced wine for both sacramental use and for sale. Process of winemaking, or vinting, required a different but equally demanding set of skills. This involved managing vineyards, understanding soil and climate, knowing when to harvest grapes, and then crushing them to extract the juice. The must, as the fresh juice was called, was then fermented in large barrels. The nuns, or again their supervised workforce, oversaw the fermentation process, which involved monitoring temperature and ensuring the wine did not spoil. They learned the art of aging wine, knowing which barrels to use and for how long. The quality of their wines, much like their beers, was often a source of significant income for the convent. Convents like the Cistercian Abbey of Maubuisson in France, or various Benedictine convents along the Rhine and Moselle rivers, were known for their extensive vineyards and the excellent wines they produced. These wines were not just consumed locally. They were often traded over long distances, contributing significantly to the regional economy. The economic impact of monastic brewing and vinting was substantial. The sale of beer and wine provided a steady income stream, allowing convents to purchase necessities they could not produce themselves, maintain their buildings, and support their charitable works. This production also provided employment for lay workers, either directly within the convent walls or on the surrounding lands. The abbesses, as the ultimate managers, made strategic decisions about production levels, pricing, and distribution. Demonstrating a keen business sense, the sheer volume of production was remarkable. A large convent might have produced thousands of liters of beer or wine annually, serving not only the hundreds of residents within the monastery, but also selling to pilgrims, travelers, and local communities. Their products were often considered safer and more reliable than those from less regulated secular sources, further enhancing their reputation and market demand. Records from various medieval convents often include detailed accounts of grain purchases, hop harvests, grape yields, and sales figures, all testifying to the scale and professionalism of their brewing and vinting operations. These operations were not merely domestic chores. They were industrial undertakings that required significant investment in infrastructure, skilled labor, and careful management. The nuns' roles as master brewers and vintners highlight their practical skills, their understanding of complex chemical processes, and their a tempora spirit. They were not just guardians of spiritual wisdom. They were also custodians of vital practical knowledge, contributing significantly to the economic and social fabric of medieval society through their masterful production of essential beverages. Number 1. Medical prowess and surgery. While often associated with prayer and contemplation, medieval nuns were surprisingly adept practitioners of medicine and even rudimentary surgery, making them vital healthcare providers in their communities. Their convents often served as infirmaries, hospices, and centers of herbal knowledge, where nuns provided care for the sick, the elderly, and the infirm, both from within their own ranks and from the surrounding populace. This hands-on medical work reveals a level of practical scientific knowledge and compassionate care that was remarkable for the period. One of the most famous examples of a medical nun is Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century Benedictine abbess from what is now Germany. Although known primarily for her theological visions and musical compositions, Hildegard was also a keen observer of the natural world and a profound medical theorist and practitioner. Her two major medical works, Physica, also known as Liber Subtilitatem, Aversarum Naturarum Criterlorum, and Causae et Curae, Causes and Cures, contain a wealth of information on natural remedies, diagnostic methods, and holistic health. These texts describe hundreds of plants, minerals, and animals, detailing their medicinal properties and how they could be used to treat various ailments. Hildegard's medical approach was holistic, emphasizing the interconnectedness of body, mind, and spirit. She believed in balancing the humors of the body, a common medieval medical theory, but also incorporated insights into diet, hygiene, and the psychological well-being of the patient. Her writings detail specific treatments for a wide range of conditions, from digestive issues and fevers to skin diseases and mental disturbances. For instance, she recommended specific herbal poultices for wounds, dietary adjustments for digestive problems, and the use of certain stones for their perceived therapeutic properties. She described the preparation of herbal teas, tinctures, salves, and poultices with detailed precision. Beyond Hildegard, many convents operated infirmaries, where nuns cared for the sick. These infirmaries were often well organized, with beds for patients areas for preparing medicines, and facilities for bathing and basic hygiene. Nuns were responsible for administering remedies, changing dressings, monitoring patients' conditions, and providing comforting care. This care extended not only to their fellow nuns, but often to lay people from outside the convent walls, including the poor pilgrims, and even nobility who sought the nuns' renowned medical expertise. The practical medical skills of nuns extended to what could be considered minor surgical procedures for the time. This might include bloodletting, a common practice to balance humors, which required precision and an understanding of anatomy to avoid major veins. They also performed wound care, cleaning and stitching lacerations, and setting simple bone fractures, using splints and bandages. Some texts suggest that nuns, particularly those in convents with strong medical traditions, were even involved in more delicate procedures, such as treating cataracts, though such interventions would have been highly risky and rare. Their knowledge of anatomy, though not based on dissection in the modern sense, was derived from studying classical medical texts and observing injuries and diseases. Herbal knowledge was a cornerstone of monastic medicine. Convents typically maintained extensive herb gardens, where nuns cultivated medicinal plants. They identified, harvested, dried, and stored these herbs, learning their properties through generations of practical experience and written tradition. The nuns knew which plants were effective for pain relief, reducing inflammation, aiding digestion, or combating infections. They processed these raw materials into usable medicines, such as infusions, decoctions, ointments, and powders. This botanical expertise was invaluable in an age without synthetic drugs. The emphasis on cleanliness and hygiene within monastic infirmaries was also noteworthy. While medieval sanitation standards were generally poor, convents often maintained higher levels of cleanliness, recognizing its importance in preventing the spread of disease. They had access to clean water, which was often brought into the infirmary through dedicated channels, and they diligently changed linens and cleaned wounds. This proactive approach to hygiene contributed significantly to their patients' recovery rates. The care provided by nuns was not purely physical. They also offered spiritual and emotional support, which was considered an integral part of healing in the medieval worldview. They would pray with the sick, offer comfort, and provide a calming presence, recognizing the psychological impact of illness. This holistic approach, combining practical medical treatment with spiritual care, made convent infirmaries highly valued institutions for the sick and suffering. Records from various convents, such as the 11th century Consuetudines of Hirsau Abbey, describe the daily routine and specific roles of the infirmarian nun, highlighting her responsibilities for managing the infirmary, preparing medicines, and attending to the sick. These detailed accounts demonstrate the institutionalized nature of monastic medicine and the professional approach taken by the nuns involved. Their skills in diagnostics, pharmacology, minor surgery, and general patient care were not just an ancillary activity but a core component of their service to God and humanity. The medieval nun, far from being isolated from worldly concerns, was often at the forefront of medical care, providing essential services that shaped the health and well-being of her society.